Good evening. Thank you for being here again. We seem to be losing people as we go, so I don't know what that's indicative of, but so just I'm going through the exact same format that we've done in the past. You see the agenda up. I put some preliminary times on those, so hopefully we can stay on track. Brian's going to click for me. Is the clicker working? All right, we're going to go forward. So the first thing, if you did not receive the letter that was sent out late last night, please raise your hand if you did not receive it. So everybody received it? Great. I hope that you had a chance to peruse through it. However, given the time constraints, perhaps you didn't. It was obviously a very quick turnaround from the last meeting, really only 3 business days. So which brings us to today. And what I sent you was the spreadsheet with the column D. But column D took into consideration, and I'm going to open it in a moment, but I just want to talk at you for a moment. Column D took into consideration 3 things. It took into consideration all your 1-minute public comments that were made at the last meeting. It took into consideration everything from the QR code that people narrated or typed into it, made comments on. And then the third thing that you didn't know was the administrators all were given an opportunity to say if there was additional revenue to allocate, where would they like to see it go in their particular building. So that's what you saw when you opened that document. So let me tell you where we are historically before I open that document in a moment. The first click, and I'm not going to have you click on this right now, Brian, but the first click is the district 60 million. As we started, as you recall, the district captured 60 million. In which, can you hear me over there? I feel maybe I just need to talk into the mic. Capture the 60 million and the Trombley is included in that. The second thing was the column E, and everybody remembers the column E from last time that we all agreed upon, which equated to $54,750,000, which then left the remaining funds to be allocated, which is where we are tonight. We're trying to allocate the remaining $5,250,000. So Plant Moran took all 3 of the QR code, admin, your 1 minute, and they combined them. They tried to combine some things similar. There were initially 68 line items. They condensed it. And then what we decided was, and what column D represents, is all the admin wants, so to speak. We tried to give them and allocate every building a fund, and that's what you saw in in column D, which I'm going to show right now. So, Brian, if you would please click the third link. Wait. No, column D. The third. Yeah. All right, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to move the mic so I can see it. Sorry. All right, so column D. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right, I'm just going to talk about the mic. So columns, we separated it into 3 segments, which you can see in the dark blue, the BAC recommendations.
I apologize, I'm just trying to get the right size.
Okay. The BAC committee statements. Then you see the QR code responses, followed by the administrative request. So our team met with Plant Moran. Plant Moran obviously associated prices, approximate prices to each of those, combine things, and we bring back to you a proposal taking everything into account with column D. So column D, if you add those 5 items, the 125,000, the 650,000, the million, and yada yada, down to the 3 million. That totals the $5,250,000 yet to appropriate. So in a moment, again, we're going to go through the same exercise. Well, each of you will have a minute to advocate or anything that you want to share, followed by any public participation so that you can hear any public that wants to share. And then the last thing that we'll be doing is that we'll once again do a QR code similar. Do you approve of the $125,000 for the track? Do you approve of the remaining funds? The $650,000 for the remaining funds to be split amongst buildings. That's what that should say. So each building of the 13 buildings, each principal would have $50,000 to allocate towards whatever they think is the most necessary in their building. We talked about air conditioning, the $1 million. We threw a number out of $1 million. I'm going to show you in a moment what that would look like if we did have air conditioning, and have our plant marine experts who can speak to that as well. If there was air conditioning in each building, what that looks like and what $1 million equates to. But subsequent, if the bond passes, then there would be exercises that would occur, and we would receive input from all of the administrators, and ultimately Plant Moran and really Mr. Madison would decide what are the priorities that would go into that $1 million. A split unit, which you're going to see in a minute, is approximately $20,000. So you could get 50 classrooms out of it. However, there's lots of variables to that. If it's a bigger space, if you don't do the split air conditioning, there's lots of variables. So no commitment to the 50, but that's an approximation. Early childhood, there was a thought on early childhood. If we commit $475,000 to be designated to early childhood, whether it be furniture, restructuring classrooms, whether that occur in one building or classrooms in each building, that would be determined at a different date, but at least we will have the funds allocated to do so. And then the north and south locker rooms. The south locker rooms, after there were pictures taken and Plant Moran explored the south locker rooms, are in much dire shape than the north locker rooms. And the historical is that the north actually have been renovated. The locker rooms themselves, the athletic locker rooms, have been renovated more recently. So that $3 million equates to a $2 million expenditure to go to south locker rooms, $1 million to go to north locker rooms. Understanding that this is not a complete revamp of locker rooms, and Plant Moran can speak specifically to what it is, because the revamp would be more like $5 million to do everything from floor to ceiling, fixtures, and so forth. Yeah.
You might ask me. Like on the south, the swim lockers are different from the more general locker rooms. So this is the one that basically comes off of the track and field area.
Yes, and I'm going to ask Plant Moran, but it's all inclusive of all locker rooms.
All locker rooms.
All locker rooms, and all
Okay.
locker rooms at North will be touched in some fashion.
Okay.
So I'm going to go, so if you scroll down, and you can see this on your own from what was sent to you, but these are all the things that the principals indicated. Some obviously were very frugal in their estimation, whether it was needs or they're just frugal, more frugal than others. Some asked for some big expenditures. And so we decided, instead of trying to capture the onesie twosies from this list, we would give everyone $50,000 to use at their discretion. Just so you know, the bid threshold is around $31,000 right now, so anything below that, Plant Moran would work with them. We need an architect, but Plant Moran would be in charge of assisting with those projects. So I want to show you some pictures of the locker room, pictures of if you scroll up for a minute, Brian. I'm going to show you the track D zone, a picture of that in a moment. I'm going to show you the pictures of the locker room. And then the last thing, other than this, that we're going to need to decide is the Parcells pool. And whether it's, if you would prefer it reopen as a pool or something else. So I'm going to give you some suggestions as what an alternative to reopening it as a pool is. I will tell you my intent in that is I don't know what the board's preference is. Budgetarily, as I said, it's $400,000 to $500,000 to operate that pool. So budgetarily, it's not a great idea. But secondarily, as I shared with you last time, the Pierce pool could be in very similar conditions. So you could reopen the Parcells pool only to have the Pierce pool have to be closed days later or 2 years later, to be determined how that structure holds. So, Brian, can you show the pictures? We can come back to this in a moment, but I just want to show, if you can show the next slide, please.
I'm going to get back into the...
Alright, so here is the air conditioning, and I'm going to ask Plant Moran to maybe speak to this a little bit and explain how these split AC units work. So Robert, I think you're here representing Colleen. So you're representing?
So second tractor.
Okay, that's okay.
Shortly. But this is an example of a mini split system installed in one of the classrooms. You see it up in the upper right-hand corner. It basically mounts to the wall, and there's, I guess, a cable runner, they call it line sets, that go to a condenser that's on the outside of the building. I believe on the lower right is Pierce. They actually mounted these condensing units up on top of the wall with some brackets, probably to get it out of the way because it's kind of a tight space around Pierce. Some are mounted on the ground. You can see in the lower left, there's a condensing unit. So these line sets will require condensing units to be installed somewhere around the building. There's other ways of approaching air conditioning depending on the building. What we're trying to do in the district is to be not intrusive with our integration of our mechanical systems with the buildings because they're beautiful brick buildings, very detailed on the outside, and we don't want to take away from that. Some of these condensing units are on the back side of the building, so you can't really see them, or they're hidden by landscaping. So we're very mindful of that going forward with any air conditioning project for these buildings. But it's a very cost-effective approach to do mini splits in buildings. Like I mentioned, these buildings being historical in nature, they have slate roofs. It's very difficult to put a rooftop unit on top of those slate roofs. And it's also, we have to be mindful of the structural implications of putting a large unit on top of a building that is 90 or 100 years old. So we have to do load transfer of getting the weight distributed through the building in order to support the unit. But this is very prevalent throughout the district. There's several areas, IT closets and whatnot, which produce a lot of heat that have these type of units, and some classrooms throughout the district.
Okay. Can't see either. Thank you. Before we talk about this slide a little bit, any air conditioning questions that either Robert or Paul can answer?
How long does a unit last, and how much does it cost to just replace the unit?
I would say about 10, 15 years for a unit.
Yeah, the part on the inside probably 20, but yeah, on the outside maybe 15. 15 to 20.
And then the replacement cost is obviously less than a full install, but do you have a sense of what it would be?
Right. Probably
the
15 grand.
yeah. Well, I'd say the condensing unit on the outside is what would go bad, and those are probably $5,000 out of the total of it.
Today.
Yeah, today.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead, just shout them out.
Would these units also produce heat, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah, not extremely, but just a little bit. So
On the outside, so basically it cools on the inside and it pushes the heat to the outside.
it's not simple.
In terms of like the front facade of the buildings, is there another option for like classrooms that are, like let's say the front of South? We couldn't put a mini split on the front of South, right? Is there another option for those classrooms that's not a mini split?
There are other options, unit ventilators, but we have to introduce air in order to make those operate. And that's more intrusive to the facade because you're actually putting a vent in to allow air to come into the building for the unit to operate efficiently. So that's what we're trying to avoid with mini splits, but it's a give and take because you have to do something with the condenser, you have to hide it somehow, and with the unit ventilators, there's always some kind of architectural grill type of installation that you have to be mindful of.
And there are some other solutions like variable refrigerant and things like that, but they're extremely expensive. So, but we'll definitely look into them.
I just have a quick question. Is there, for every one that's inside, is there one outside, or do they like have multiple?
Right.
Oh, so you could have like a whole bunch of those things outside.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you can pair them up to cut down on the outside piece.
Other questions about air conditioning?
I have a question about the marketing of this. In the other communities you've represented who put this on their bond, have there been any pushback from the community as far as putting this in the bond language?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of the districts that we deal with have they're built during the 1960s boom with suburban sprawl, And those are buildings where integrating this type of, air conditioning unit on top of the building isn't as bad as what it would be here. Because you're trying to be mindful of the architecture and you don't want to destroy it. So with the buildings that were built in the 1960s, they're more conducive of putting rooftop units on top of the structure and putting a ductwork distribution system throughout the school. So it's a lot different, and it's not really a controversial type of issue, I guess, with some of the districts that we deal with.
Yeah, and I would say anytime we're doing work to help improve the classroom environment for instruction, I think there's always support of that.
Excellent, thank you.
Are these comparable or like more efficient than traditional like air conditioning units, or in terms of efficiency and energy use?
I would say every year they get more and more efficient in their operation. They're, with having these units, there's also electrical capacity issues that we have to be mindful of because you're adding more load onto the system. So that's all part of this integration into the building.
Would the units that we're talking about also have heat pumps in them as well? I have a unit on my office, and it's both a heat pump and an AC unit. And would we think about like how that might impact, or if there might be some opportunity for additional heating?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, keep in mind with all this, we're just trying to budget for it, right? We still have to hire engineers and architects and figure out all the structural issues and electrical issues. So yeah, we'll definitely be pressing them to come up with innovative solutions to try to solve this.
One more question. How many of those would 1 million actually get us?
I think we were looking at,
It was $20,000.
$20,000 a piece.
Yeah,
So
approximately.
50.
Do we know how, we know PTOs have fundraised for air conditioning in some of the buildings. How many classrooms do we have an idea that don't have air?
Oh, that don't have air? I do not know. I mean, and to your point, some of the buildings, it's not consistent district-wide. Some of the buildings, I think Ferry is the majority air conditioned, Richard has a lot of air conditioning, and then other buildings have none.
Yeah, so some of our thought was what are the ones that needed the most? Like someone mentioned a home ec type room with a bunch of ovens
That
and
was me.
things. Yeah, okay. Sorry. So yeah, that was
Let's be
like
clear, that was
a science lab or maybe a south-facing room that gets a lot of sun during the day, right? So there's probably some rooms that need it more than others.
So being a building that does have air, but they're breaking because they're over 15 years old, will there be is there a plan in place when these units do break?
Yeah, Ben, are they on a program of replacement?
Typically, we've been replacing them as they break, so we have an in-house HVAC technician who, when we have an issue with them, he can repair them in-house.
Can you hear over there?
Saves us a lot of cost.
Sometimes, whoever's listening.
Yeah, if you just stand up so people can hear over here, at least speak a little bit more loudly.
So, Cindy, I don't know if you heard me, but as you know, we have an in-house HVAC technician who replaces these. It's all done in-house, so we can save costs that way. So they're repaired as they break. We try to get as much life as possible out of these units, and then when they're no longer able to repair them, we'll replace them in-house.
Other questions on air conditioning?
Yeah, and by the way, we could also look at a consortium buy on these if we're talking about multiple units, which will probably save some dollars overall. But we have to have a strategy in place of where they're going to go, how many do we need, and do it that way.
And to be clear, when we say 50 classrooms, that is a complete approximation. It could be 30. So no promises. The allocation would be if agreed upon, and we would take it as far as it would go, but depending on cost at the time and what we choose to, where we choose to put it. All right, air conditioning going once, going twice. All right, next we have locker rooms. So here's some pictures of the locker rooms. Thanks to Mrs. Fannin for taking these for us. I'm going to speak to the locker rooms and the needs in the locker rooms. Plant Ryan.
Yeah, as Andrea mentioned, that Grosse Pointe South there's probably more need because of the age of the building. Also, keep in mind that the south locker room they call it the pit locker room because it's at a different level. I believe there's a lift there right now. So
There's a makeshift ramp in there.
a makeshift. Okay, so it doesn't meet ADA requirements as it stands today. So there's a lot of different issues, I guess, related to South than there is at North.
So could you just talk what 3 million will and will not do? I mean, I know you don't know definitively until you get into it, but.
Right. So it's not a complete gut of these locker rooms and reconstruction. It's, I guess a spot renovation, if you will, for the locker rooms to improve them. I believe, it's not.
I think we talked a little bit about getting rid of the showers, right?
Yeah, getting rid of the showers was one of it because, a lot of kids, they don't shower anymore. There's not a requirement.
In the locker rooms.
In the locker
Let's clarify that. We hope they still shower, but not. Like I said, it's not a complete gut of these facilities. It's probably a spot renovation and improvement for each one of these high schools.
Yeah, locker rooms are just very expensive spaces with all the tile. You can see the old marble shower partitions and the plaster ceilings and all the plumbing. It just gets very expensive as you start to renovate those spaces, which are why they haven't been done in a long time.
So, like, unlikely to be something structural, just but like replacing the lockers, fixing floors, fixing plumbing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you just gotta be careful if you pick at it too much, it all
Yeah.
unravels.
Yeah.
Right.
With that south space, is that just structural or is that historic as well? I mean, will you take that into consideration as just the south space?
The interior rooms. I'm not sure if there's a lot of historical.
I guess I'm remembering the bathrooms that got done and the hubbub in the community about the marble and what have you.
Right.
How do we address that as we talk through supporting the bond?
Well, I know that the old girls' locker room, we basically gutted that. It had marble partitions, some beautiful, marble, wainscoting on the walls and whatnot. But it was repurposed for a need for classrooms that went from the IA building over to Grosse Pointe South. So there wasn't a lot of pushback with that. It's because there was a lot of antiquated fixtures in there. It wasn't used. It was basically a large space that we could convert into a classroom environment. So with this, I think there is a need to renovate this space, but I'm not sure if there's any architectural significance with any of the interiors of this locker room.
No, but at the same token, I'm looking at some of those floors, some of them look pretty good, right? So if there's ways to save things, we absolutely want to save them and stretch the dollars.
And some of those pictures are of the north varsity locker rooms, which have been redone more recently, as opposed to their PE locker rooms, which look very similar to the South Pit locker room. So if anybody wants to take a tour, I will show you the historical lack of significance. Happy to take.
Yeah.
All right.
Locker room questions?
Yeah, that brings up the question. Are these locker rooms something that every student comes in contact with because of PE classes, or is it just some portion to the student body?
I couldn't answer that.
Yes, so the gym classes use those locker rooms, those changing areas and stuff like that. And then all of our sports teams, attempt to use those spaces. They're just not functional right now for a lot of our teams.
But is this mostly for the sports teams?
No, like I said, all of our gym classes use those.
They do use them.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's changing spaces.
Okay.
And as far as, so that's what they would benefit during the school day. Then after the school day, it would benefit our athletic teams. And stuff like that.
When you say they're not functional for the sports teams, like what do you mean?
You can see those tiny lockers right there.
Yeah.
So if you can't fit a softball bag,
Yeah,
or
okay.
I mean, the locker spaces are just extremely just not functional.
Okay.
Like we have like I said, we have our softball teams that have to keep their bags in my office or in the teacher's classroom, because they can't just leave them anywhere.
Okay.
And it's not just softball, it's basically anything.
Yep.
So I mean, it's just kind of a waste of space. Even when we have teams come in to play, we host a lot of events. When we have teams to come in, we don't have anywhere for them to keep their stuff either. So it's all brought out onto the gym floor and put behind their gym bench. So it's just not a space that's actually usable.
Lisa, did you have a question?
I did, and Dr. Delgado, I guess one of the questions, I think what you're saying is, all kids have to take PE in high school?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's like, is it a requirement?
It is a requirement, but you can also PC, some kids PC out of it, personal curriculum out of it, based
Got it.
on taking an extra year of world language, or there's other ways within our programming studies that students can elect to not take PE, and some do elect to not take PE, but it is a requirement for high school graduation in Michigan.
And I might suggest that even kids know that this is not a great space that they want to go into, and probably opt not to take PE for those reasons as well.
A lot of them opt to not take PE to add more rigor to their transcript if they're trying to get into top tier universities.
Yeah, exactly.
Fortunately or unfortunately, whatever lens you're using.
Yeah.
All right, other locker room comments? Going once, going twice, sold. So let's go to the next. Oh, sorry, these are locker rooms continued. This is a big one. So this is the Parcells pool space. I told you one of my objectives is that it is my hope that when this committee brings a recommendation to the Board of Education, that the board will accept the committee's recommendations with none or very few changes to it. That being said, this is going to be a tough one. And I honestly, unless board members want to speak, I don't know how the board feels about it. But what we, and by we I mean Plant Moran and administration, talked about is what I already shared with you with concerns with the operating budget as well as the remaining middle school pools. But additionally, what could this space look like in lieu of a pool, which would include filling in the pool and making some pretty cool spaces. So we've allocated funds, that 3.75, because filling in the pool itself is very expensive. But we've allocated those funds, which were agreed upon in column E from the previous. But what those funds will be utilized for, I'm asking for a recommendation ultimately from this committee to the board, knowing that the board's going to have to ultimately make the decision on that. So what you're seeing in front of you today is ideas that Plant Moran have shown pictures of, either of projects they've done that they could speak to. But Parcells could have a very unique space in lieu of a pool, arguably making it a little bit special, and perhaps more students would use a space like this. I'm not supporting or denying that. I don't know, because if we allocate it, if we say that it's not going to be a pool, it's going to be used in some other manner, that would be determined at a later date. But what you're seeing here is a STEM lab, hands-on creative classrooms, art and media center, whether you want another gym, maker spaces. There are so many opportunities. That would be a beautiful space, obviously. Additionally, I do want to say that IT move, if you remember early in the conversations, that IT move might take some of this space, because this is really the best place to put all of our IT as well. So obviously would not consume this largest space. It would be addition to, and maybe we don't put the IT there. So I'd like to open it up to thoughts and discussions. You have board members here listening, and there will be a question on that same QR code that I shared with you, asking you specifically, do you think the Parcells pool should be opened as an alternative space or not? So something like that. But yes, go ahead.
I really like the creative idea of the way in which we could use this space. Two things. One, there's an increasing growth in esports at the collegiate level, and I think our district could do really well to invest in that and create a kind of a magnet, essentially, for people that are interested in those sorts of programming. And you could do that in a classroom that is also utilized, during the rest of the day for other creative activities using digital media. So, and I guess what I'd be really interested in is if we could also make sure that this space, when you make that kind of investment, is also accessible to other students throughout the district. Because if you created a lab that could work for esports, that could be useful for people at the high school level, even though it's taking place at a middle school.
Thank you. Others? Thoughts? Comments?
Can I?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Can I put Ms. McGrath on the spot? I would invite you for a minute, and I'm speaking for a hot second as a mom of swimmers, so it's difficult to say some of the things I'm about to say because I do know that Parcells Swim Club, it's a club because it's 5th through 8th grade, is oftentimes the first time that a lot of the students at Parcells have the opportunity to learn to swim the 4 competitive strokes, and so I really am a strong advocate for that. However, I would love for Mrs. McGrath to talk about lunchtime at Parcells currently, having experienced it, and what this space could do for that time of day specifically.
And just for like reference, I've been at Parcells for 5 years, and in the 5 years I've been there, we've not been swimming, and we are doing okay. It would be great, but there's also benefits to possibly rethinking this. Currently, our lunch space there's not one group that can sit like in one area. So we have 2 gyms that we split between, and it really limits the amount of time that students are able to be in the gym. So having a space where we could feed children all together would be really helpful. It would also allow us to then maximize gym offerings in the current gyms that we have. So that would be, in like my perfect world, an option that could exist.
Have we asked students, like,
yeah,
have we asked students like what they think, or, I mean, I know that's not always an option, and like we said, like Fierce could close at any, like it could close tomorrow, like we could just shut down, but what do kids think? I don't think.
I've always wondered as a principal, I put my son through Parcells, he was there for 4 years. I've always wondered how you function with the lunch situation. I've always thought, I talked to my son, he would share with me, he's like, Mom, your school's so beautiful, you have this big cafeteria, it's air conditioned, kids go in, kids go out. It just always seemed in our family like, wow, they have to function in that situation. I think it would be fabulous if you could have a great, or some type of the space used so kids could have a nice place to eat their lunch. It is kind of very old-fashioned to put them in those gyms. And then when you're trying to schedule a building and all those kids and all their different scheduling options, to have that gym shut down in the middle of the day is challenging for administrators to try to figure out. So
We call them the gym cafetoriums?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you explain to dumbest guy in the room, what does this mean for the 5.25 million remaining? Like we talked about 3 million for locker rooms. We talked about $1 million for.
This is separate. It's actually a good question. Good job. We've already talked. This is completely different from the 5.25. So you have already, as a group, said that you are going to put 3 million towards the structural to make it usable at all.
Right.
Then you also, in that column, you said that you were going to put, I think it was 3.75 towards either opening, repurposing, and we said at the last meeting that that would be determined by the Parcells community. The district is going to have to decide whether it's a pool or not. But if it's something alternative to a pool, then obviously we would absolutely defer to these. So that's to the Parcells community as to what, and that would happen after the bond passes. There's no reason talking about that right now if it's not going to pass. So no, there is no additional funds. The funds have already been allocated, and about 5.75 to this Parcells pool area.
Okay.
But the question still remains.
So is the question, would this committee recommend to the board that it go in as that 375 be spent as redeveloping the pool, or should it go to some alternative? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when we are selling the bond, though, to people, we would not know what that space is going to be, right? So we could not say it's going to be a STEM lab because it could be a lunchroom. So
that is correct to an extent, and I don't want to make promises because you do want to have a general idea. So maybe I misspoke a little that we would possibly, and I'm going to ask Plant Moran, you can have a conceptual idea. And so again, and you can jump in and to your point, because people are going to say, okay, that's great. We just put 3.75, but what are we doing with that space? So whether it's the esports or a STEM lab or a makerspace, whatever the case may be, I do think we need to probably narrow that scope a little bit, to your point.
I just think people will get mad if we say, like, if I'm out there saying it's a STEM lab and then it turns into a cafeteria.
100%.
That's like a big difference for people.
I totally
Yeah.
You want to talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So, obviously fixing the structural issues is number one, but I think, if we talk to it in terms of creating a flexible, collaborative space that could probably serve a lot of different purposes. During lunch, it could be the lunchroom, but the rest of the day, it might be able to be a makerspace or esports or a hacker lab. And I think the space is big enough, you may be able to do multiple things inside of that square footage. I forget exactly how many square feet it is, but it's
close to 7,000.
Yeah, that's a pretty big space. It's probably bigger than a cafeteria would typically be. So I think there's a lot of different things that could reimagine that to be a much better asset for the building.
But I think to her point, we're going to have to narrow it for the marketing campaign so that when we talk to people, we know what we're saying. So I think your point is very well taken. Yes.
So I'm a little torn as a parent that I have a current little school, elementary, and I have a newborn, that we mentioned that, okay, we take the pool concept away, but other schools in the district, and we know that we don't know the state, but it takes away from this community, my kids potentially not even having that opportunity to swim, which is a big issue nationwide, a lot of kids. I'm a forward thinker. I love the idea of making it interactive, but we say this will benefit the district, but now my children are being deprived. What are we doing to make sure that that community gets the same support or swim opportunities that the other two schools are having? Because now we're being removed. Yes, it's another option, but we have to look at how do we balance that, because
where do the Parcells kids swim now? They don't at all? They don't go to high school or anything like that?
We've been waiting on the pool to be fixed for a couple of years.
Right.
But for swim club, they go to North.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
And just to your point, and I completely hear you, I think the advantage, and I'm not arguing one way, but I think the advantage of the space during the day, this is strictly Parcells, right? So they get some advantages over the other middle schools, like the other middle schools, arguably because they would have swim pools until they don't. They too have some advantages. So, but after the day, I think anyone could use this space. Anyone can go to the North Pool. So, I mean, there's just like in other buildings, there isn't total, even in our elementaries. Some have things that others don't. So I completely get your point, but that's how I would answer that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned over the course of this discussion period is that, like, looking at it long term and by the numbers, long term, these pools are not going to be in these middle schools. We cannot afford the replacement of them. And so I think this could be a good test case for what could be if we're not replacing these pools, just because we're seeing the problem in all three of the middle schools, essentially.
I just want to note, we're talking about a cafeteria, and rather than convert this space into a cafeteria because your kitchen functions on the first level, I would probably convert this to the gym and then convert the existing gym into a cafeteria.
Is there enough space to do like an esports and a gym? I mean, is it a big enough space to do? I mean,
Well, to put it in perspective, I guess, it's a 25-lane pool, and from here to that wall where the clock is 20 yards. So it's a little bit longer than that. 25 yards, and this is 20 yards from here to there. So it's a pretty sizable space. But I don't know if you could put a gym function and something else in there together. Because you would need the room for a court, and I don't know if you could accommodate both.
Yeah, typical courts, 50 by 90.
Yeah.
Probably for a middle school.
This is 60 this way.
You gotta,
I know, just wheel it out.
It wouldn't be a good competition gym for like 500 people to watch a game, but it would be probably fine for normal day-to-day activities during the school day.
Other questions, thoughts on the pool? So that you feel prepared to answer that question when it comes up.
My only question is kind of speaking to, like, so do middle schoolers have swimming time during their gym at all, like at any of the schools? Or is it?
I think the other two schools, and you can talk, they probably have a unit of swim in their
They do have.
PE.
They do, okay.
They probably have a unit, like a few weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. That's typically how a curriculum works.
Okay.
Brownell does too. They have some swim something during 6th grade and up.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, this is probably separate from this conversation because I do like this idea a lot. And I think especially cafeteria or something that's like very important to kids. But being a Harbor Woods parent too, I know that we don't have access to any of like the community parks or anything like that, where there are like alternatives for swim lessons. So I think having some alternatives or thinking about some alternatives for Parcells kids would be really helpful.
Agreed. Yes.
If the data room is moved to there, how much space is that going to take up?
Did you hear the question?
Yes. Good question. I'm not sure how much space is in Brownell. In that basement
We moved
area?
one in another district, it was about 2,000 square feet probably, between all the offices, the head end room.
And the servers, all that.
And this is 7,000 square feet?
Yeah.
So there'd be, so 2,000 square feet would be the IT room, leaving 5,000 square feet to do something alternative.
Approximately.
Approximately. Can you do a gym in 5,000 square feet or not? A competition gym? I don't know what the size of a
Maybe a middle school size, or I'm sorry, an elementary school size gym is about 4,000 square feet.
Okay, so is a middle school about 5,000 square feet?
Just wondering. Yeah, so it's going to take some design work to figure it out, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Others? Okay, I think that's the last slide of pictures. Will you just forward one? Yep, go back to, so again, at this time then, we're going to go to our 1-minute activity where Dr. Bishop is going to facilitate that with the microphone. I think we turned it down, so I think it should be good for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bishop. Floor is yours. I'm going to fast forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Is public comment first? I apologize. Yes, I apologize. Public comment wasn't ordered this evening.
Sure. Does anyone want to make a public comment before we get on to the next part of the meeting? Come on up.
And Brian, there should be, on the public comment side, there should be a 3-minute timer.
Sure.
Kevin Nugent. The esports conversation is phenomenal. I think that's a really unique opportunity for the schools to draw in a lot of people. That Parcells pool, while it was a pool and existed and had a great function, having unique spaces in Grosse Pointe might be the direction that we're going, and having a little more fluidity throughout the district and having people enjoy different spaces at different buildings and be more encompassing to everybody and have less lines confining everybody where they need to be. An esports arena will draw lots of people from outside the community. There's a lot of public school or private schools that are offering STEM labs and esports as a draw to their communities. There's over 200 high schools that are competing currently in esports leagues, the Michigan League Esports Federation. So I'm learning this a lot on the fly. I'm not really prepared for this, but when the conversation came up, I was thinking what an exciting opportunity it would be to consider that, because it's something future, innovative, something that will keep our sciences and our other programs. It could be something that robotics could make an arena there that they could use, but just something that's unique. We have pools in a number of places, and I understand the proximity to people and why some might be easier, and it's convenient to have it locally. But if you're talking about drawing kids from Pierce and Parcells and Brownell and having them converge in one place to do these activities, I think that's a really exciting thing to consider. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to make a public comment?
Mr. Ishmawi, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but is esports and MHSAA, is it sanctioned by MHSAA now?
It's not, but it's
heading that direction.
It's on the list of things that might be coming.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments now, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bishop to do his 1-minute exercise.
All right, I think we went over our norms already, so we're pretty clear on our rules of engagement. But at this point in time, we will have an opportunity to open the floor as far as for 1-minute conversations. Once again, don't be that person that has to have the microphone taken from you. Mr. Lazar, I'm not looking at you, sir. But I just want to make sure if anyone has something on their heart, they want to be able to advocate for it, be able to talk as we come back to, to our last meeting. We want to make sure we have a chance to be able to discuss that now. So if you raise your hand, I'll come to you with the mic.
I would like to advocate for an option F to go on there. And that is that the $3 million that is being devoted to locker rooms here be devoted to STEM and early childhood instead. As I think about what's going to draw people into our district, as I think about the way that we're going to increase enrollment for Trustee Klepp's comment at the last meeting, I don't think anybody's going to be drawn by locker rooms. And I'm not saying they're not important, I'm not saying they're not needed, but budgeting is a matter of making trade-offs. And if we think about what's going to really benefit our district, if we think about what's really going to benefit the students in our district, I think that the early childhood in the STEM is going to be much more important. I'd also mention that in the number of mentions, each of those got many more mentions than the locker rooms did, or even the D zone. And I think that we're about to vote kind of up or down on things, and we'll just vote yes on things. I think that if we had an option F, where we said instead of that $3 million for locker rooms, we put it to STEM and early childhood, I'd be interested in what we say.
So to that point, when the vote comes, again, we're trying to look for 2/3 approval. If you don't approve of the locker room because you want to look at alternatives, that would be the time to vote no, and then discuss what that revenue would be used for in lieu of locker rooms. And then we could have a discussion about that after. Other 1 minutes?
I won't take it so you can't take it away.
No, here, take the microphone.
I won't be that guy. This is advocating for the estimated $125,000 to finally finish the unfinished resurfacing of South's track. When you redo a track, you typically do 8 lanes and then the 2 semicircles at each end, all with the rubberized all-weather surface. For some reason, part of South's was not done. We have pole vault runways, we have a long jump runway, everything else is painted concrete. And it's extremely slippery, it's difficult to walk on with spiked shoes. And when athletes come off of the turfed surface, if they happen to run through the end zone, they're hitting that with spikes and they're ice skating with no control. And we could probably talk to the athletic trainers about how many injuries we've already sustained. It's a reasonable price. The surface is ready to go to just have that rubberized all-weather surface put on there. Thank you.
Any speaking to the $125,000 project in Colleen? Others?
Thank you very much.
I don't need that. I talk a lot less than you guys, so we're good. And just going back to the using the spaces as best we can. We can't grow any more space, so the locker room idea it really is to make that space as functionable for as many different people. During the day, 90% of our kids are going to be in gym classes. So that space is going to be able to be utilized. And then after, it's still going to be able to be utilized. When we host events, now we're going to be able to use those spaces. I know we're not talking about complete gutting, but we did talk about maybe taking those shower spaces and making them into meeting rooms for coaches, for refs, for a lot of different things. So that's why I think making use of those spaces is a big thing. Because right now, those are just dead spaces for 60% of the day. We're not able to utilize those. So.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I would also like to echo what Mr. Nugent said at the microphone. I worry a little bit about, and I know there's so many critical needs in the district, but one of the first things we talked about was marketing, and we're at that point we're about to market. I do think projects like a STEM space or an esports space at Parcells would be a special thing, and it might be something that draws people, especially to the north end of town, if we are going to lose the pool. And I would advocate for that because I do think we need a few projects in this bond that are going to be sort of stand out or innovative that makes people say,
That's something special, that's something that's not in the rest of the district. It's not a boiler, which I know we need, but I would advocate for that as well.
Thank you.
I'll use the microphone.
Thank you.
I'm not normally someone that would advocate for locker rooms. I'm not that. I certainly wasn't that kind of kid in high school. But I will say, well, I don't think that anyone will come to our schools because we put $3 billion into our locker rooms. I do know that sports touches a lot of people in our district, and that having nice facilities for the kids that are playing those sports, and frankly all the kids that are touched by physical education in some capacity, is beneficial, not just to the kids that are there, but also just attractive in creating an environment where kids want to come here to play sports. So I think that, especially considering that we're just looking at that $5 million, using the significant portion of that for rehabbing of these underutilized spaces when we know a lot of kids end up getting involved in those kind of things, I think makes a lot of sense.
Thank you very much.
I don't need that, I don't think. I just wanted to advocate for the locker rooms as well. I work in a district where maybe we didn't take care of our athletic facilities as well. We made the news. A lot of kids went to different places in Macomb County because they felt like athletics weren't supported. I know that we did, focus mostly on academics, and I think that is always most important. That's the function of a school. But my point is, I think, like you just said, I just wanted to echo that athletics are very important. They touch many, many families, and having updated, useful facilities is attractive for the whole district. You don't want to turn people away by not having the proper facilities for the kids. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess one quick vote for advocating for the $50,000 per building. One of the biggest important things is going to be all of our teachers, our administrators, pushing and pulling for this bond. And without giving some empowerment to each one of the buildings so that they can have an input in where this money's going, you run the risk of not getting them engaged and involved. So I'd like to see that as a priority.
I guess perhaps one last voice on supporting the locker rooms. Those look like they were when I was there. I graduated in '81, if you couldn't guess by the hair and beard. And after my kids went through here, multiple sport kids, each of them, when you're here in the North Gym for a wrestling tournament, and half of the stands are taken up by the kids' equipment because they don't have a place to put it in the locker rooms. And South is worse because the gyms are smaller. It's long overdue to make those spaces useful.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else?
I have a question. It's like, we spent a lot of time talking about the pools at Parcells, and what we're going to engage in next, I'm just not clear as how that connects with the $5 million of the projects that we're talking right now.
It's completely separate.
Okay.
So if you could, Brian, could you go back to the first here again? Or it was the third one, I think, actually, on that slide. So as he's looking for that, and I put him on the spot, we have already allocated funds to do something. In that column E from last meeting,
yes,
we allocated that 3.75. So all I'm asking you tonight is, you've allocated it, now how would you recommend the use of it? Tonight, you're just going to be looking at column D. So tonight, the only question regarding the pool does not have to do with money at all. It's to do with use.
Got it.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Andrea.
Can I ask a question about the elementary buildings, early childhood preschool ECC, like John talked about allocating $475,000. Oh, sorry, yeah, can you go back, please?
You want the microphone ready?
No. The number of mentions 8, early childhood preschool ECC, allocate $475,000 towards early childhood education. Like, what does that look like?
So I hesitate a little bit to say, but as I shared at a board meeting, it would be my hope that by next year we would have universal preschool in this district in some capacity. And in order to do that, whether that it's at one location, whether every building has, I don't know what that looks like particularly, But if we had funds for that, those funds could be, unlike sinking funds, that would be potentially furniture for those if we wanted to create bathrooms. Bathrooms are very expensive, so I'm not saying that. But to make those spaces very early childhood comfortable. So we put a number to that, not knowing exactly what that would look like.
Okay. And that's included.
That's included in column D for tonight. So
like to John's point, he was talking about expanding early childhood. That is a plan, right? And there is money for it in this.
yes, and I want to be cautious to say that's my plan, right? The board hasn't necessarily talked or approved that yet, but I think, and I don't want to speak for the board, I think that they would agree that early childhood has obviously been a push from the state level, and something that I'm a huge advocate of early childhood because that's the foundation. If you don't do it well there, it's hard to do it. Correct. And obviously we have many students that are choosing alternatives because we don't have the space and location for preschool. So it is my hope that we would have early childhood, and that is what that money would go for. I did speak with a friend of mine at My Leap that now oversees the early childhood. She seems to think that our current buildings could actually meet the criteria for early childhood. We haven't had someone come and inspect them or anything like that, and I don't know that we have the space. I know Lisa and I talked, Dr. Ream and I talked a month or so ago, is there even space at Defer? I started with her and she's like, well, not really, because I have to be on the bottom floor unless you push something else out. So those conversations are yet to be had, and again, I would hope that we would have early childhood regardless if this passes or not, but this certainly would make it those classrooms more enticing.
A quick question on that.
Yeah.
My memory from an earlier Q&A was that early childhood was going to be $500,000 to $1 million per building. So the 425 doesn't go very far toward what you're talking about, does it?
I'm going to be candid. I don't remember. Did we put up 500 to $1 million in each for early childhood?
I've got it here.
Do you have it right there? Okay.
I think that number came from if you had to build a new classroom inside the building, put bathrooms in it, bring it up to the level where it gets past the state certification process, then it could be as much as $500,000 a pop. But for instance, if there's an empty kindergarten room already that has bathrooms or that has enough space, that could be a very easy conversion where it's very minimal cost. But we really have to go through building by building and get a better understanding of the utilization of each floor plan. So you're right, it has to be on the first floor. It can't be up on the second floor.
And I don't know all of the stipulations with early childhood to make sure that it's licensed. Now they change consistently, so I did at one point. I was under the understanding, and maybe incorrectly so, in speaking with this individual from My Leap, that actually if you have an open elementary building, you're not trying to create a new space that needs to be licensed. You have an open elementary school, it's actually much easier to obtain licensing in an open elementary. Now, if you're trying to start a brand new school, then they expect bathrooms in the classroom. I don't even know that they expect bathrooms in the classroom. They have to be in proximity to a classroom.
Correct.
But I'm not positive about that, so I want to be cautious to say that. So I apologize I was wrong on that, but that answers the question. So you're welcome.
Want me to take sit down and take a break?
All right, anybody else?
So I have a question about early childhood too. Thank you, I'm quiet. So is the early childhood, is that also in preparation for like the Great Start Readiness program?
Correct.
Because I know now that's like,
Yeah,
they just
so
expanded the eligibility.
100%.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So the eligibility, really, most students can get into that now with the eligibility.
Yeah, the issue is space.
The issue is space, and that, I'm going to tell you, as a superintendent for many years, this has been the conversation. As I said, I'm a huge proponent of early childhood. Unfortunately, districts don't have the space for that, particularly because a lot of districts have sold assets as enrollment has gone down over Michigan, making it really hard. And now we're in a place where we probably shouldn't have sold those assets to create that space for early childhood. But I would say, I think, again, I have not done, but I think we have space for early childhood in this district. It's just a matter of where. Can every building have it? Perhaps not. You know, do you put it all at one building? But it all has to be on one floor. So do first and second graders. So does pre-K. So There's a lot that has to go on one floor, so it's challenging. It will take a lot of planning, but that's our hope.
Okay.
Regardless of the 475, it'll just make it better with the 475.
I just have a question.
Yep.
The STEM and STEAM and CTE centers, do we already have programs and stuff? Or is it like something we don't offer yet?
Specific curriculum for that. We
Yeah.
have extracurricular programs like our robotics programs, and I'll defer to our administrators. I don't think we have any specific STEAM curriculum right now in our classrooms.
We have like an innovation design program in middle school, or there's a wood shop and wood tech, but this would be an opportunity to expand the after school activities. Like our Destination Imagination team just went to global finals over the weekend. They did outstanding, so that would help more kids be involved in it potentially, because those areas are growing and kids are interested.
And I'll say those robotics programs, which are outstanding. If you've never had a chance to watch that, it's amazing, the engineering part of that. They're expanding tremendously too, but they need space to run those robots, and if you've never seen that, that's
No, they're amazing, and I do think that's like the way of
the
the
future.
future with academics and stuff. So
And even at the elementary, they're starting the library media specialists. You're starting with Autobot. You know what I mean? They're starting with some basic code now. So
3D printers.
Yeah, 3D printers.
Yeah.
3D
That's been a big.
So like at Pierce, when we have a floor, our robotics team started it, but it's get taken down, put back up, and there's no place for it, and so we're constantly competing. It's similar to athletics, but there's not a place to house it, and it would be used continuously throughout the year if there was a place to put it.
So the money, if we didn't do the locker rooms, then we could use that money for, but we wouldn't be able to build new spaces. I guess
We
is
cannot
my
build.
question.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can do whatever, but I don't think there's money or appetite to build new spaces. It would be, we have a lot of open spaces currently for utilization in our buildings.
Okay.
So it'd be utilizing current spaces differently.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That was my question.
Yeah, no, good, great questions, and I'm right in line with you. Gotta think to the future for sure.
All right, going once, going twice. Thank you so much for the engagement. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So the next slide, we've done our 1 minute advocacy. If you switch to the next slide, please. So here's the QR code. Before you look at it, remember we're looking for 2/3 of the people sitting here voting today must approve or say, yes, I agree to using $125,000 for the track itself, must agree to the $3 million for locker rooms. All those, there's 5 of them. Additionally, there's going to be a question about the pool that has no monetary ties to it. It's just, I can't remember how it's phrased, quite frankly, so please read it correctly. If it's phrased, should it be open as a pool or something alternative? I'm not positive on that, so please read that correctly. And then once we have that data, if, for instance, someone says no to, or 2/3 do not agree with the locker rooms per se, then we can open up a discussion of how alternatively that $3 million could be allocated. Any questions about what you're doing? All right, I'm going to give you, I know you're good at this, so we're going to say till about 10 after. This is
Drum roll.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's stop at that one. So the 125,000, yes is the purple, no is the red. So that one is 95% if my eyes serve me correctly. So moving down, so that's a yes. Discretionary funds, well, that was 100%. That's nice, and our administrators will appreciate that. Air conditioning improvements, so that was again above 2/3, but a little bit more no, but still passed. Early childhood investment, that was a resounding yes, just a little no. And then the locker room renovations. So the locker room renovations passed by 83%, so that is a yes. And then should the Parcells pool be reopened as a swimming pool? The no is in the red, and the purple or blue, whatever color that is, lavender. So 91% said no, which would mean that it would be utilized in a different fashion or form. Did you say wait?
I didn't say anything.
So that solidifies the remainder of our $5.25 million that we were set to allocate. So awesome, in less than 6 hours,
we've allocated the full 60 or 120, however you want to look at it. And I sincerely appreciate all of your work on this. The next step is that now we need someone who's going to present our recommendation, not ours because I'm not part of this, BAC's recommendation to the Board of Education. Do I have any volunteers? Well, I'm going to nominate someone then. I'm going to nominate Rebecca Fannin because she knew this was coming. She was at the Tiger game today, so go Tigers, they won. So what she will do then, and we will do, is that she will present the full 120, similar to how we presented today. We'll add these components, show the column E, in conjunction with column D from tonight, as well as the $60 million that the district allocated, and then the board will hear that on the June 11th. There will be a presentation on June 11th. We welcome you to be there. I think it's, if you can, I know this is an incredibly busy time. The board will hear it, discuss it, but a decision, a final decision will not be made until the June 23rd meeting. At which point, if it passes, whatever passes the board, whether they accept all of it or whether they make changes to it, then it goes to the attorney, who will then put our ideas to legalese and put the legal language on it, at which point the board will have to pass the actual bond proposal language. And then, in the middle of all that, all the marketing starts and the educational campaign starts once that happens. And then, of course, the election happens, and then we'll see where we go from there. So, does anyone want to second my motion to have Rebecca present that?
I second.
All in favor? And to Rebecca's credit, the reason I asked her was she was on the other bond. I mean, she was one of the members of the other bond committee. She also obviously served in this capacity prior to being an employee of the district, and now is an employee of the district, so I have easy access to her to work with her on this to ensure that we're presenting what we heard tonight and capturing everything. So, any questions about that before I thank you, and I know that President Worden wants to thank you too. So any last minute comments before we, yes?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate the process that we've had here and the way that everyone has been engaged. The one thing that I just come to mind, and I hope that the board considers, is we have, over the last few years, we've asked the community a number of times for a significant amount of resources. There are 3 buckets of money, right? The current facilities fund, the sinking fund, and now we're potentially asking people for bond money. And I think it's going to be extremely important as we talk about this with the community to be clear about what is being paid for by what. Because it's very confusing to me, and I sit on this committee. I don't know how y'all handle it, but we need to make sure that people understand what money is out there, what money has already been, where money has already been allocated, and what this new stuff is. Because I think it's going to be very hard to talk about it with this community unless that stuff is crystal clear.
That is an incredibly good point, and we actually have that data because we've already allocated the sinking fund dollars, and we have that on a spreadsheet too. So we started I called it the 250 document, which is the 250 million that Plant Moran put together. It's now 300 and some, but at the time it was 250, and we have a document that shows exactly what's being utilized with sinking fund dollars. So that's a great thing, and we can absolutely include that and have it on our website for community members to peruse through at their leisure. Thank you. Other thoughts, comments? Well, I just want to echo, and I know I'm going to let President Worden say the last thing, but I just am so grateful to you that you came with an open mind. You gave of your time, and always, but particularly in this time of year when it's incredibly busy. I felt that all of you were professional, even when there was disagreements about expenditures. I want to thank Plant Moran and our administrative team. Dr. Stanley has been here. Dr. Bishop has been here. Now Mrs. Fannin. It's been a real team effort to get to these points where we could give you some homework in preparation to expedite the process. Oh, of course I can't forget Ben. Ben's the most amazing. Ben, stand up. Ben's the one who's going to have to do all of this. Thank you. Ben's incredibly humble and gifted, and we in Grosse Pointe are incredibly glad to have you and fortunate to have you because, to your point, now if this passes, he's got 110 million sinking fund plus $120 million, that's a lot. So we're incredibly grateful for his leadership and for Plant Moran's assistance in all of this. So I have nothing further other than a genuine thank you to all of you in the whole room. So President Worden, the floor is yours.
This is very brief, but I do want to say on behalf of the Grosse Pointe Public School System, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the members of the Bond Advisory Committee for your dedication, diligence, and thoughtful service. Your commitment to the success of our schools and the responsible stewardship of community service resources has been invaluable. Your efforts in helping to shape a stronger future for our students, staff, and families is remarkable, and we're truly grateful for your support and service. This is important and impactful work. Our beautiful historic buildings and the learning environments they provide are directly dependent upon the success of this bond. Your efforts in helping to ensure that our facilities continue to serve generations of students with excellence is just very important. We didn't always agree on everything, but I will say that this has been a very respectful and very civil group of people, and I am eternally grateful for that. I've received a couple of emails from committee meeting members reaching out to tell me their thoughts about this process, pro or con, and I greatly appreciate that. And I want to thank Dr. Tuttle, Dr. Bishop, Ben, for your hard work in getting these committees together, and also all the homework that, we come here and do our homework, but the work that goes into this by Dr. Tuttle and Dr. Bishop is hours and hours and hours of work. These slides take a long time to put together, and I thank the members of Plant Moran, Robert, Paul, and Gary for everything you've done to help us with that. Thank you to Mrs. Fannin for always helping us with this as well. So I'm going to end by just saying this has been a great experience. I know that you will all be stewards to help us pass this bond, because I know everyone has supported it in one way or the other. Whether you agreed with the projects or not, we all came to some consensus, and it looks like from the voting we've all come to some really serious agreement on what's important to our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, those of you I didn't know. Pleasure working with you, and have a wonderful night.